I'm struggling to kind of concentrate because I can hear myself twice, but that's all right. I'll just push on. I wanted to share this thought with you because we've been hearing a lot about, in this season, it's been called unprecedented, hasn't it? And then at times you've heard the word unprecedented. It is literally unprecedented. What else have we heard? We've heard uncertain. These uncertain times, unprecedented times, extraordinary times. So I want to talk about us as leaders, which is what we are if we're in this call and if we're listening to this, what we can do to lead through those kinds of seasons. And this really is a unique season, I get that, but it's not unique in the sense that there aren't other times where we will not know things and there will be uncertainty and there will be extraordinary circumstances. And so I want to just speak to that. And I was talking about this over lunch earlier about a Netflix special I was watching, which was the Jerry Seinfeld stand-up thing. And he was talking about marriage. And he said that marriage is like a game of chess. Now, for those of you who are married, you'll know what I'm talking about. Those of you who aren't married, if you have been, you know what I'm talking about. If you're yet to be married, this is preparation. But it's like a game of chess where the chessboard is like flowing water and the chess pieces are like smoke. And I think that this COVID season's been a bit like that. It's just so uncertain. And when you think you've got something worked out, it changes. And I just want us to be okay with that because we're planning for the 26th of July to be back in the room and we're putting a lot of work into the planning. And I saw Kate's work today for the back in the room for Cessnock, and I know Andrew and Rebecca for Scone have been putting together a similar plan, and it's quite comprehensive. It's quite detailed, and there's actually still some work to do when it comes to actually fleshing it out and getting people to execute the plan. So there's still work to do, and it's a significant amount of preparation that's going into that. And then you never know, we could end up like Victoria and everything changes. And that's difficult as a leader because we need to be first because we're leaders. So we need to prepare a way, and we need to make a path, and we need to be clear, and we need to bring clarity and certainty in uncertain times. So, what do we do when we don't know what to do is the question. And that's a question that others ask, not just in this season, but just in life. And we're just not sure. How can we plan and what can we do when we don't know what tomorrow is going to look like? And for us as a church, the question for us is how do we keep growing as a church? Because we always want to be growing. It's one of our mission statements that we'll always be growing. How do we keep doing that? How do we keep raising leaders? How do we keep being inspiration to our community when we don't even really know what we're doing? Well, we do, but sometimes it feels like we don't. So what I wanted to say is there is still some certainty in the uncertainty, and there is actually still some precedent, even though we are in unprecedented times. And I also want us to be thinking about how we shouldn't underestimate ordinary. We say that there's a lot of extraordinary things happening, which is true, but I want to point to how there's a lot of power in the ordinary because some things actually haven't changed. And that's what I want to speak to this afternoon. It's for us to take away from this some encouragement about some of the things that haven't actually changed. And because there are some things that haven't changed, there's actually a lot of work that we can still do. And so what I want to talk about is that there are some things that just still work. And what I want us to do as we move into this week and the weeks to come leading into our, our launch of our online location, our re-entry back into the room, is that I want us to really focus in on these next few weeks about working what works, working the things that work, that we know work and that haven't changed. Let's not get too caught up in all the stuff that's fluid. Let's not get too caught up in all the stuff that's like smoke, but let's really just focus in on what we know works and work the things that work. And that's what I want to talk about now, the things that haven't changed. And for us as staff, for us as a team, what can we still be working that we know is still going to work, that's still going to accomplish the vision of growing the church, of raising the leaders, of inspiring our community. So I just want to share on 3 things that we know will work if we work them. So one thing that hasn't changed that we know will work if we work it, one thing that hasn't changed is God. God hasn't changed. God's the same, the Bible says, yesterday, today, and forever. So I would encourage us in this season, and whenever you find yourself in uncertainty, or whenever you think you're in an unprecedented time, or whether you think you are, in an extraordinary time, remember that God is unchanging. And so let's work that relationship with God, because if we work the relationship with God, then guess what? We know that works. So let's get close to the unchangeable God, because in him there's always stability, and in him there's always security, and in him there's always strength and wisdom. He's always faithful. So I would encourage you to continue to do the things that work that relationship. So whether it's your daily disciplines of reading your Bible, praying regularly, Michelle sharing about, encouraging her daughter to get with God for 10 minutes a day, that could be a great encouragement for us as leaders, not to just because in uncertainty and in extraordinary times, unprecedented times, sometimes we throw away the foundational stuff that's really important. And at the end of the day, when all this blows over and we enter into somewhat of a normality again, we don't want to be having to rebuild and repair a relationship with God that we probably should have had right throughout this season. So whatever it is for you, let's remain faithful to that, an unchangeable, stable, secure God, because if we work that, that's going to work for us. So I don't know what it is for you, whether it's you listening to the Bible, reading the Bible plans, Bible apps, reading books that bring you closer to God, nature, whatever, worships, music, whatever you do, whatever that is, don't throw that away. Don't lose that in this season. So God's unchanging. The second thing that we know still works, and he's still here, is you. You are still here. You have not, you might have changed a little bit, but you're here, aren't you? I can see you. Hi, you're here. So you're still here. And if you work, that actually works. So sometimes we can kind of just stop working and start throwing our hands in the air and giving up when everything's uncertain and everything's unprecedented. It's like, oh, well, I've got permission just to throw my hands in the air and not worry about actually getting on with it. But by working, that works. You're still here. So work is good. Work is good for you. So work yourself. Don't just work your relationship with God, but work yourself. So I would encourage you to lift your own level of leadership during this season. And you've got the space for that. Don't think that because we're busy, we don't have the space, the margin to actually continue to lift in our level of leadership during this season. I've been listening to you guys, and I think it's exciting. I think I've heard Kate this morning. I've heard Natalie talk about, and I've heard Rach talk about some of the things that they've been reading over this season. So, I think that's been, if we haven't embraced that opportunity, we might have even missed it, because we are getting a little bit busier now. But don't let that discourage you. If you haven't already thought about what you could be doing to grow in your own leadership, then make the decision today to use this time as a catalyst to be growing in something for yourself, because you're still going to be around. You're going to be with you forever. So let's make sure that, you're the best that you can be, and really honour and steward the skills and gifts and talents that you've got. It's not about being the same or better than someone else. It's about making the most of what you've got. So lift your level of leadership during this season. So maybe it could be adding a simple, small new discipline. If you, or re-engaging a lapsed discipline. You might have let your words to live by slip for this season. Let's re-engage that. Maybe you have, you were, doing some kind of health thing and you've let that slip. Or maybe you were doing some kind of reading program and you've let that slip. Or you were meeting up with someone on a regular basis for your own emotional and mental health and you've let that slip. Or, whatever it is, or, you should have added something you haven't yet. Maybe just take this time to work what works, and that's you, and add maybe something small as a discipline into your own life during this season. I did something that I can't even brag about it because it was so simple. I'm just going to say it was God's grace on my life. But I got this email from Alpha Crucis. Actually, it was from Stephen Fogarty, I think, or Sandra Fogarty, one of the two. And he's like, we've got these special online courses for credential holders for the ACC from Alpha Crucis. And they go towards credit for a Master of Leadership. And at the moment, they're free. They're normally like, $400 each or something. They're free. I forget they're called. They're not an actual credit or anything. It's not that simple.
No, I don't know how that works.
And I thought, okay, well, why not? Like I had a bit of time. So I got these two. I did these. One was Leading Through Crisis, and one was called Leading something.
After Crisis?
No, it was that the crisis one was covering a whole range of stuff, like preparing for crisis, leading through crisis, and then like crisis recovery. That was the crisis one. Then there was another one like dynamic leadership or something. I did these 2 things. It didn't take long, but you might be surprised at how simple some of these new things might be that you try. And my point is that I thought I'd just see how I go with it. And it was a lot simpler than I thought it would be. It was a lot faster than I thought it would be. And now I've got a couple of extra little things that I could use later on that could help to increase the capacity of my leadership. So work it. Like you're there, you haven't changed, you're still around. So make the most of what God's gifted you with and go for it. And trust me, everyone who's in this call today, you've all got the capacity to be growing in the level of leadership that you've got. So get close with God, work that relationship with God, work what God's given you because you're still around, irrespective of how uncertain things are. And finally, guess what else is still around? People. People are still here, and it's on us. It's our responsibility to be working those relationships with people. People still need to be reached. And how great has it been to see Beyond Church continuing to reach people from the moment that we could not gather together right through this whole season until we're about to get back together again. We've continued to reach new people. We've continued to grow our reach, and we've continued to see people say yes to Jesus. We've continued to see people say yes to serving on teams. We've seen people added to teams. We've seen new leadership rise. We've seen a new church location launched all through this season. So this is something that we are already doing. So I just want to encourage you to continue to do this, to continue to work what we know works, which is reaching people. People still need to be reached. People still need to be known or in community, which is what we've been able to foster. People still need to be led, and that's what you've been called to do. You've been called to point people to what's next for their life, and you continue to do that. So you should be encouraged. That hasn't changed. Now, we have had to adjust the methods, haven't we? And the kind of model that we've used, but things actually haven't changed that much throughout this season. And if we're working these ordinary, and guess what? They're ordinary things, these things that we're doing. They're not extraordinary. They're just the ordinary things of reaching people, building community, helping people to feel needed, so serving and leading people. That's all ordinary things that we've been doing from before, and we're doing them through this season, and we'll do them afterwards. So we have to work that. The ordinary things, they're ordinary. They're actually precedented things. They're not that unprecedented. And they're actually certain. They're not uncertain. In uncertain times, there is some certainty in these methods, like phone calls. And we talked today in our executive team meeting how this current time in this transition for our church is actually really critical when it comes to connecting in as meaningful way as possible. And we can still do that. This does not stop us from making nothing has stopped us from making phone calls. And we've been diligent in that. And I think some of the reasons that we've seen such high engagement in what we've been doing throughout this season is because we've done the very best with what we could in continuing to connect with people through phone calls. Text messages is the same thing. And our social media presence has had to lift, and it has. And I just want to comment too with Andrew and Rebecca and Kate, since she took on the social media for Cessnock, has just been excellent. Like, you've just really made the most. You've worked what works. Which is fantastic. Sending out our weekly email. I was reading something this week where one of the leadership experts, I guess you call him, that I follow, and you guys know I read a lot of his stuff, Kerry Newhoff, and he's got a whole heap of stuff online. He produces stacks of content. He was talking about his email database and the amount of opens that he gets, and he was saying that 30% for him is a higher percentage of email opens for his whole email database. He's got, I think he's got on one database 16,000 subscribers or something. It's pretty significant. 30%, that's a win for him. And he was saying that he prefers email over social media because social media is controlled by the company, the organization. They have their own algorithms and they actually choose who gets to see what. But email, you get to choose who receives it and you get to choose what they receive. And all they have to do is choose whether or not they want to engage with you or not. And so for him, 30% engagement, and for us as a church, we should see that as a win, which is what we see. We see around about that figure. So I want to encourage you guys that we've been working that as well. So all the work that you put into creating content for that method of communication is actually highly valuable and actually continues to work because it's still reaching people. It's still encouraging people. It's still showing people that we're leading them. It's still showing them that they're known, that they're needed. So I want to say, first of all, thank you, but let's continue to work that model and that method of communication. Even visiting people, Denise has been continuing to visit people over this season. That's been fantastic. So let's continue to do that. And just because we're going back to being together, let's not throw away some of the great wins that we've seen and some of the high levels of engagement or increased engagement we've seen by implementing some of these methods over this season, because we can continue to do them. There's no reason why we can't stop seeing people like we have been seeing them and visiting them. And like our generosity, like Michelle mentioned it earlier with Andrew and Rebecca in Scone, and Cessnock has just been phenomenal as well, doing stacks of deliveries to increase engagement, showing people that we are here for them. They are known. We want them to be a part of what we're doing. They're needed. And I just think that's been so excellent that we've been doing that. And again, that hasn't changed. That's just what we do. Generosity doesn't change. So let's increase and keep increasing our level of engagement by engaging with people. Let's keep inviting people to step into their God destiny like we've seen. We don't want church to just be about attending. And what we've learned over this unprecedented and this extraordinary and this unusual and uncertain time is that church actually isn't about people attending. It's about people engaging in mission. And I'm excited about that because that's really my heart. I'm actually not and never have been, because I've been in church forever. And when you've been in something forever, you can get pretty bored pretty quickly with it. So I'm actually not really interested in just going to church. I never really have been. I've always wanted to be a part of church. I've always wanted to be engaged in something meaningful. And I actually think that that's what everybody wants. I don't think that's unique to me. And I don't think you should think it's unique to you. I think everybody, whether they know it or not, or whether they can articulate it or not, they want to be on mission. They want to be part of something that's bigger than themselves. And so what we've learned is that we don't have to kind of pander to people who just want to turn up and be present. We want to actually give people something that they can engage with and be part of and contribute something meaningful to. So let's not throw that away. Let's continue to engage with people, help people to be on mission. Every person who connects with Beyond Church, I love it how we give them an invitation to serve. Everyone who connects with us, they get invited to Beyond Basics. And my heart is actually that every person that has completed Beyond Basics has every opportunity to serve every single time we gather. I mean, why not? Like if they've said yes to being a part of Beyond Church, and Beyond Church is all about engagement, then every time we get together, every single person should have every opportunity to participate in some way. So if we've got 300 people that have completed Beyond Basics, then there should be 300 opportunities every single time we gather for those people to serve and be engaged in mission. Otherwise, I think we're doing a disservice to the community of faith. And I'd much rather have 300 people who are on mission than 1,000 people who are just turning up to watch an event. And I think we've learnt that over this season that, if we continue to work what works and work with people, that's what we'll see as we move out of this, which is really exciting. So that's that. The good news is that these fundamental unchanging realities will work if we work them. God, you, and people. So let's get to work. Let's go. Let's do it. There's Xander. Hey, bro.